Hi, everybody, and welcome to the newest edition of Talk It Out, Conversations for College Men's Mental Health and Well-Being. We have a lot of really exciting stuff to talk to you about today. And this is going to be the October video, so stay tuned for November's video. Check out our past videos on YouTube as well. We're always talking about some sort of intersection of mental health for college men and really how that you can thrive in college, how you can make all this work for yourself, and how to really be successful here at UCSD. My name is Christopher Sperling. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a health educator here at UCSD Health Promotion Services, part of the Student Health and Wellbeing Cluster. We do all sorts of great education, all sorts of workshops, all sorts of materials and services. So feel free to check us out, including things like Talk It Out and other YouTube videos that we have on there as well. Now I will turn it over to our guests to introduce themselves as well.
Hola, hola. My name is Luis Legaspi. My gender pronouns are he, him, his, él. I'm a communication and leadership program manager at the Center for Student Involvement, also known as CSI. And I'm excited to be here with you, Christopher.
So excited you could join us today. So we're going to kind of jump right into this intersection of men's health and mental health and sort of how all that works in college. So that sort of like general question here of why is the mental health of college men important to you?
Yeah, it's important because it impacts how we relate to each other, right? As a cisgendered male, as a queer man, I'm constantly thinking of the things that impacted the way that I related to my brothers, to my father, to other men, but all other folks of other genders. And it really impacts the way that we carry out our familiar, romantic, friendships, our collegial relationships. And so I'm really interested in how do men lead? How do men communicate? How do we relate to each other? I think that's particularly very important for how men have healthy relationships with each other. And so I'm constantly ideating over ways that we can be more loving, more compassionate, especially when we have other sources of information, whether it's our family, our culture, society, the university setting, telling us like, no, you need to act this way, or you need to perform gender in this manner. And so I think it's really, really paramount that we have conversations, which is why I work in a team called Communication Leadership. And the communication piece is really important, especially for men who oftentimes are socialized not to talk. We're socialized into our bodies to assert ourselves physically, and quite rarely are we given the agency or the skill sets early on to learn, how do we articulate? How do I feel? Are there thoughts that are going through my head that I need to express to other people? So I think that's why it's really pivotal that we talk about men's mental health in the university and college setting.
That's really great. And I really want to point out that you said some really interesting things around performing gender and also around masculinity. Like, what is masculinity, right? Like, how do you relate that to gender and sex and performance of all these different things? And I think a lot of people are figuring that out. And I think a lot of people haven't really had the chance to critically think about that in their own lives. And so one of the points of these sorts of conversations is to start that dialogue internally, externally with groups of friends and whoever is watching, and really make that something that we reflect on, because a lot of people have just never even tried to reflect on that. And that's not good or bad, but this is just an opportunity to expand and an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to really thrive here at UCSD through all these different areas. So now that we've talked a little bit about mental health overall and what that sort of means to you, what is maybe one thing that you wish all college men at UCSD knew?
I wish that they knew that they could share internally how they feel with other people, and that they would find folks that would listen to them, right? I think that goes across all genders. I especially think that's true for men and male identified folks. The fear of like, if I share how I feel, my thoughts, will I be rejected? And so then we overcompensate and we go do other things. We go play sports, we go, go to the gym and get really strong and do, like impress people in other facets. And I do think that I wish that we would create a society and a culture that was more interested in having men express themselves, and whatever that expression, including sometimes anger. I think we also oftentimes moderate men's expression around anger, even though that's the most common expression of emotion for most men. Like we tolerate that, but then we see a man crying and we're like, whoa, 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 what's happening here? Like, why are you breaking down? And it's like, no, like let us emote, let us express, let us communicate to the best of our ability, and not to judge someone when they don't have the words or the capacity to communicate in the way that someone else may be able to.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it takes a village, right? We've all got to be a little kinder, a little more open-hearted to really make everything work and really create this community that we want to create. At the end of the day, we want to be here for each other. And to do that, that's part of a reflection of understanding how we respond to certain things, but also with other people saying, okay, this is an experience someone is having. How can I relate to that? How can I support that person through this experience? As opposed to that first initial judgment or that first initial sort of automatic piece where if it's automatic, we're mindlessly thinking about it as opposed to mindfully approaching the situation. And so I think it's a really, really good piece of advice that you just offered there. So moving on a little bit to services and things that you offer here with what you do here at UCSD. So what type of services do you offer yourself as well as through your programming? And how would a UCS student, if they want to get involved, how would they reach out to you and sort of access these services or resources or other ways to get involved?
Thanks. So there's multiple ways. So we are the Center for Student Involvement. So our website is really simple. It's getinvolved.ucsd.edu. We administer multiple different kinds of programs. So there are 4 broad topical areas that the Center for Student Involvement engages in. One of them is student organizations. This is where all the student clubs, organizations are housed in. So it's a great way for students to engage on a gamut of different interests, topical areas. They can range from social, political, historical, cultural, activity-based organizations, government politics. So that's one area. And then all the clubs and organizations are housed there. I'm going to save my area for last. Then there's sorority and fraternity life. So for any student who wants to engage within this type of student organization that is student-led and is oftentimes all gender identified. So there are many male fraternities that for many men is a great opportunity to connect with one another in a great programming around brotherhood. So that's a facet, and you can find all the chapters that are here at UCSD. And then a third area is community service. So how do we as Tritons engage within the community? We aren't here only for ourselves. We're here to impact the world and impact the communities that we belong to, the community we exist in here in San Diego County and beyond. So then there's a bunch of different kinds of programs within this broad area. And then particularly I'm biased towards communication and leadership. It's a set of programs that are administered through this topical area. And there's a few of them that I want to highlight. So one of them is iLead, which is a workshop driven. It's drop-in. You get to pick them. Every quarter, there's somewhere between 25 to 35 different workshops, ranging from topics like intercultural communication to how to be an active accomplice around racial justice topics, right? And so there is a breadth of different workshops that are ranging from an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. You get to choose them. Many of them are around equity-based, identity-based topics. And I like them because they're all interactive. So it's an opportunity for students to build community. All the facilitators are partners across the campus. Many of the workshops are led by CSI staff. And it's an opportunity for someone to practice their communication and leadership. And then another program that I facilitate is the dialogue program with a set of dialogue ambassadors. And in this one, it takes restorative practices that come from a broad set of different Indigenous practices throughout time. And this is a really great opportunity that I particularly would love for men and male identified folks to come attend, because this is where you get to use that skill of communication, especially verbal and written communication. And we talk about a breadth of different topics. One of the dialogues this upcoming quarter will be on hypermasculinity. The date is to be set, but it'll be on the website. And I really want to invite men to have dialogues around the impact of gender and gender expectation, right? So as men are socialized and they're told, men do this, men have to behave in this manner, men can't do that. How does that impact your life? and how has that impacted other people? And so everyone will be invited to the dialogue. And also, I think men need to be actively involved in conversations that address sexist behavior, that address patriarchy, that address gender inequality, that impacts everyone, including those who identify as men. So anyways, that's kind of a gamut of different programs. So those two particular last programs, I Lead and Dialogue, are great opportunities for men to engage in a community setting and to practice their leadership and communication skills in real time.
That's fantastic. And I love that you use the term like practice. Like, this is the time to practice these skills. This is the time to get this experience when you are a student before you're going out there beyond. And those are such a great range and lots of different things you're doing. That's a lot of things. So kind of opportunities for anyone who wants to get involved. They can kind of pick and choose. I think it's really great that you're doing a lot around masculinity and gender and things like that as well. I know you use the term hypermasculinity, and I think that's a really good way of talking about it. I think so often we have these sort of buzzwords around toxic masculinity and like what that means. And if you sort of talk to someone about that out of the blue, that doesn't always land well, and that can actually become really negative in tone around that conversation. And so on that masculinity piece, we often talk about not toxic, but what is healthy, what is engaged masculinity, and how does that look in your life, and how can that be different looking in somebody else's life, and that way of masculinity. Because then we can talk about values. What does it mean to be certain things? Like, how can you value this? How can you protect? How can you do all these other things that we often tend to associate with terms like masculinity, which of course go across the gender spectrum, not just for men, right? So it's so great that you're doing this and really opening up minds and doing all this really good outreach as well. That being said, those are all the questions I have for you. If there's anything else you'd like to share with the viewers out there, this is your time to shine.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to encourage everyone to attend these programs. I especially, in my experience in this role, when I get to engage with men and we bring them into a space of learning where they get to practice this, many of them will come either, obviously right now we're very virtual, right? But they come and they say like, this has been really helpful because I really want to figure out how to communicate my needs to my partner, right? I don't know how to tell my parents that I'm struggling and I don't want to be an engineer, right? It's like there's these expectations that I have to provide for my family. And this is the idea of this hypermasculinity where we as men are being socialized to perform in certain ways, to have these expectations. And when we don't meet it, it's a huge crush to our ego, to our well-being. And there are very few people who are willing to talk about it, right? And so I think about these are the opportunities where we create some psychological safety, some kind of scaffolding for men, all folks, but obviously because of the content of today's talk, to practice this in a pretty protected or guarded way where I might not want to do that with my partner, right? So for me, a partner will be a man, but for whoever's viewing this, it may be a different gender, right? So and to practice those vulnerable, like we talk a lot about vulnerability, but who gets to be vulnerable? Like who gets to benefit from it? And so we think about these questions, and it's bringing a consciousness that we don't always allow men to have a conversation around, and we may scold or kind of judge each other for being like, why can't you talk about this, Christopher? Like, who do you like? Or why can't you tell your parents this? Or why can't you tell your supervisor that? Like, I just don't get it, right? Like, and it's like, no, we come from a place of seeking to understand. And then that's how we create change, right? I'm very obviously dialogue driven and very talkative. And I want to encourage people in whatever facet that looks like for them, that they're communicating what's happening internally. And then I'm also very much interested in equity and social justice-based work. How do men activate to challenge the things that they're seeing around them, right? So one of the things that these particular programs also allow for is for men to have conversations around, hey, I do notice that in my math class, there are very few women. Or I notice when I'm in this, work group, everyone looks to me and I'm the only man and everyone else is other genders, right? But I don't get why I know nothing, or I feel less confident and this other person's very confident. And so how do they also get the leadership skills to be able to intervene, to influence people to catch these biases, to catch these inequitable practices that many of us are reproducing, sometimes subconsciously without an awareness, other times maliciously. I doubt it's happening as often at a university setting, but I know it is too, right? Like we are a microcosm of the universe. So it's obviously happening. So anyways, I really hope that everyone will attend who's listening to this, and men who are really vested in trying to live a more integrated, holistic life where they get to exist however they are, with no scripted expectation of you have to, stand up straight and you have to be stern and don't express emotion. Because if men are going to be disproportionately given certain opportunities inequitably in society that is patriarchal, that unfortunately sexist, then we need to create men who are going to express these healthy behaviors, that are going to start thinking, hey, there's another person who could be a great CEO and I'm skilled, but actually I'm going to tap the shoulder of my woman colleague or this queer identified person, or there's this, whatever it may be, right? And that is how we start to transform society to meet with our espoused values, right? You talked about our values. I think there's obviously an espousing of equality within the US and broader, and in many different countries, but then are we actually, are we walking the walk that we're talking about? And I would say we don't. And so that's where these programs come in helpful to build those skills, to bring that consciousness, and to make mistakes in a very safe environment, and then go do better in the quote unquote real world.
Gotcha. That's also fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that. You had so many good points that I can't even bring up just one because there were so many good ones. So I super appreciate that. That being said, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so happy to have you. I'm so happy to finally be able to highlight the programming you're doing as well. And it's really been fantastic. For everyone listening out there, check out those services, do it now, and get involved this year. Have a good time, but also get involved and become a better person through all these different things that you're going to do. You're going to grow. You're going to get out of your comfort zone in a good way, and you're going to really be thankful for getting more involved in these different areas. That being said, feel free to check out our next video next month, and it was such a pleasure having you all here. Thank you so much, and I will see you then. Bye, everybody.